And now we will move to the second portion of the lecture, and it is about new media communication. So, what is new media communication? What is new media? The term new media has been around for 2 decades already. It can be found often both in literature and throughout the web, and even though it is very hard to define concisely, the older and younger generations have a general idea of its meaning. For most people, new media may simply point to digital media found on the internet and similar recent media developments like pictures or videos on Facebook pages or blogs, a video game played on a TV, or a computer to a multimedia exhibitions in a museum to the interactive features of a DVD. In rough terms, for general public, new media deals with some new technology that has enriched our ways of communicating and interacting in the last few years. It is a term with a broader cultural resonance rather than a narrow technicist or specialist application, a term that offers to recognize some big changes, technological, ideological, and experiential, which actually underpin a range of different phenomena. It is, however, very general and very abstract. We can then argue that during this era of evolving technologies and their cultural uses, new media is a multidimensional change that is shaping cultures and generations at the same time that scholars and content producers are trying to define it. Defining new media, however, is not a simple task. An immediate consequence of having coined the term new media and using it is the historical and technological distinctions that arises between older and newer media devices. These distinctions are normally based purely on the technological aspect of the systems used for uh, producing content. For example, we can mistakenly talk about analog media like magnetic tapes, newspapers, paintings, film versus digital media like compact disc, videotapes, memory cards, online data, and assert that the latter constitute what people are calling new media today. Although the use of analog media has diminished considerably in the last decade and newer media content is mostly created with digital devices, it is important to understand that there is not an absolute break between different systems used for media production. In fact, many digital content are reworked and expanded version of the old analog media. A straightforward example of this is the possibility to stream online using Netflix of a compressed digital version of Hitchcock movie that was shot on 35 film. Seemingly and perhaps more impressive is Google's recent groundbreaking media experience, Google Art Project. uh, Google Art Project consists of digital recreation of the significant art pieces found in museums throughout the world. In the project's website, you can explore museums from around the world. Some of you might have a completely different notion of what old media is. You may think that cell phones are part of the new media trend. Some may argue that a cell phone is obsolete and old if it doesn't take pictures, record videos, or allow you to browse the internet. After understanding the misleading outcomes that time and new technology developments have brought to the definition of new media, it's then safe to return to the more abstract and plural definition of this term and elaborate from there. So we can now say that new media not only deals with technological development but also with the artistic expressions that can be derived from the media, new media. So, new media refers to technological, ideological, and experiential changes that are closely related to changes in the production, distribution, and use of media. We are currently experiencing this process of change, and it would be hard and ineffective to try and encapsulate new media as one specific phenomenon. Now, we see why it is called new. Um, It is new media because of new textual experiences. This idea relates to the creation of new and original media experiences, as for example, sculpture, a series of photos, a movie, an installation, a computer game, etc. uh, that explore new and different genre, media formats, sensorial experiences, consumption patterns, interactive features, among others. What is key in this new text is to offer the users a compelling and innovative experience which results from the interaction of this text and the user. Computers and internet offer us this possibility, and everyday new texts that explore unconventional genre and formats can be found. Uh, Second is that new media newly represents the world. So it has provided us new ways of representing the world. This concept is understood as the development of new media that are used to interpret and represent the world in a novel way. This new representation of the world can be based on traditional media creation, like a photo, video footage, and animation that have been modified to render new textual experiences, as for example, 3D or IMAX films, screen-based interactive multimedia, and virtual environment. You might heard about Henry Jenkins. Henry Jenkins talks about a recent media expression that supports the idea of finding new ways to represent the world, and that is transmedia storytelling. Now, this transmedia storytelling actually refers to a story that upholds across multiple media platforms, with each new text making a distinctive and valuable contribution to the whole. The use of these creative tools define a text as any artifact or product like a TV program or a video game. Next is that new media establishes new relationship between subjects that are users and consumers and media technologies. So this idea makes a sense of the changes that new media technologies are bringing to the experience of consuming media. Seemingly, it deals with the consequences and meanings that changes bring to the users, like a touchscreen phone, digital books, game consoles, portable HD cameras, and movie players, photo geotagging, etc. So Jenkins developed the idea of media convergence, which speaks about the process of how media is being consumed and used through the many technological devices that constantly feed us, and media content constantly feed us media content regardless of where we are. As a consequence, we are already living in a convergent culture, which implies a culture shift on how media is opening in our lives on a daily basis. So, thanks to the proliferation of channels and the portability of new computing and telecommunication technologies, we are entering an era. We are entering an era where media will be everywhere. Then we see that new media uh, provides new experiences of relationship. This principle understands the changes affecting how we personally and as a community are experiencing time, space, and place. These changes are closely related to recent technologies and various kind of developments in the internet, like social media, Google Maps, and virtual communications, and have a strong influence on how we see ourselves in the world and how we interact among ourselves. Today, worldwide interactions are mostly driven by internet channels that shorten distances, compress time, and diversify connections. And this allows for the emergence of ever growing virtual communities with specific identities and interests, like fun communities, forums, and social groups. Uh, Next is a new conceptions of biological body's relationship to technological media. That's what makes this form of media technologies new. So this idea is related to distinctions between the human and the artificial, nature and technology, body and media as technological prosthesis, the real and virtual. So this idea pertains more to the study of human relationship with technology and media and how these developments have become an extension of our persona or personality. Then we see that new media creates new patterns of organization and production, because of which new media is new. The concept that refers to the undergoing changes in media culture as a whole, industry, economy, access, ownership, control, and regulations. So we see that there is a change in everywhere, right from industry to ownership and regulation. And this idea complements that of the shifts in the media production and the consumption. And in contrast to the older trend of passive media consumers, audiences are becoming key players, main players in the production and distribution of media. At the same time, that new forms of licensing content are increasing collaboration around the world. So we see that big media conglomerates still control most of the content that is produced today, but the internet has become the niche where anyone can distribute its own content and generate its own audience. So mass media is often divided into the traditional and the new. The traditional media refers to those media that communicated uniform messages in a one-way process to very large mass audiences, which were assumed to be homogeneous in all the sense, they possess much of the same characteristics and interest. And this is the type of communication associated with traditional broadcasting, like terrestrial television channels like BBC and ITV, and mass circulated national newspaper and Sunday newspapers. Uh, there was little consumer choice beyond if you TV channels, radio stations, and newspapers. And the new media refers to the screen based digital computer technology involving the integration of images, text, sound, and to the technology used for the distribution and consumption of newly digitized media content which has emerged. So other such examples are Apple iPhones, BBC News website, satellite receivers, and the website of Radio Times, etc. So new media include computers and the internet, digital cable and satellite TV, sky boxes, and DVD recorders, which enable customized, individualized television viewing with choice of hundreds of channels and digital media like CDs, DVDs, MP3s, internet downloads of films, videos, and music onto mobile phones and MP3 players. User generated media content through website like MySpace, Facebook, even all the social networking site, and interactive video consumer games through PlayStations and Xboxes are all examples of new media. So let's look at the differences between the old media and new media. Now, what distinguishes the new from traditional forms of mass media are some main concepts. Those are digitality, interactivity, hypertextuality, multimediality, dispersal, and virtuality. Digitality, when we say it is essentially means using computers where all data, text, sound, and pictures are converted into numbers, binary code, which can then be stored, distributed, and picked up via screen based products like mobile phone, DVDs, digital TVs, and computers. Next is interactivity. Users or consumers have an opportunity to engage and interact with the media. You can create your own material, customize viewing to your own choices with a much greater choice compared to the passive consumption or take it or leave it features of the traditional media. Next is hypertextuality. This refers to the link that form a web of connections to other bits of information which give users a way of searching, interacting with, and customizing the media for their own uses. Then we have multimedia. As the word suggests, it refers to the coexistence of different media in a single package, which is for our purpose is a website. Multimedia can take several forms such as computer games, digital arts, and reference work like encyclopedias. I'd like to cite what Rockwell and McTavish have told about my multimedia. A multimedia work is a computer-based rhetorical artifact in which multiple media are integrated multiple medias are integrated into an interactive whole. Uh, it is a rhetorical artifact because its purpose is not administrative or technical, but to convince, delight, or instruct in the classical sense of rhetoric. By rhetoric, we understand something flowery, fancy, and bombastic. By rhetoric, we understand the use of language effectively to please or persuade. Loud yet empty words, you say empty talk, are some, you say, uh, some some of the meaning of rhetoric. So artifact is a man-made object that is taken as a whole, and you say that multimedia is a better medium of instruction. Multimedia is a better medium for appealing or persuading mass, especially rural illiterate mass and children. Then we see the dispersal, which is another essential uh, difference between the two, traditional and new media. By dispersal, it is referred to the way media have become less centralized and more adapted to individual choices, with a huge growth of media product of all kinds which have become a part of everyday life. The routine use of internet for information, shopping and entertainment, email, laptop computers, interactive digital TV, social networking sites like Facebook, downloadable content onto mobile phone, the podcast to MP3 players, also how media have penetrated into the fabric of everyday life. So the production of media content itself is now becoming more generally dispersed throughout the population rather than restricted to media professionals. For example, people are now making their own videos and posting them onto the internet. According to Chad Hurley, who is the chief executive of YouTube, there were 8 hours of new consumer generated video uploaded to YouTube every minute in 2000s, like now also since 2007. um, and then we have internet diaries like blog, which are also beginning to rival traditional journalism as the sources of information and news have been rising. At the same time, Technoroti, you might know, which is a blog tracking service, claimed to monitor millions of blogs. Uh, Next is virtuality. That is another point of difference between the traditional and new media. This refers to various ways people can now immerse themselves in wholly unreal interactive experiences in virtual worlds created by new technology, as in computer games, and also create for themselves an imaginary identities in online communication and networking site like MySpace, Babo, YouTube, and Facebook. Okay, now I would like to provide some insights about new media. More than any other technologies for mass communication, contemporary media allow for a greater quantity of information transmission and retrieval, place more control over both content creation and selection in the hands of their users, and do so with less cost to the average consumers. The internet serves as the best example and has already formed the backbone of most future mediated communication. The internet was designed to be decentralized, meaning that control is distributed to all users who have relatively equal opportunity to contribute content. The increased bandwidth of the internet further enhances users' ability to become content producers and to produce material that is fairly sophisticated at low cost. In addition, you see, many of the new technologies are more portable and therefore more convenient to use compared to older media technologies. And these characteristics of new media are tracking the foundation of our conception of mass communication. Today, media institutions are changing such that mass production is less mass. The explosion of available channels afforded by the new technologies contributes to the demassification of the media by diffusing the audience for any particular media product. This has resulted in channel specification and the old media uh, theories and also various communication models of broadcasting to the masses have given away to market segmentation and targeting to niche audience. Although existing media institutions are well positioned, you see, they're well located to adapt to these changing conditions, the fact that the new media shrink the size of the audience for any particular channel is likely to create opportunities for others And that is, if smaller audiences mean reduced cost of production and distribution, then more content producers will be able to enter the media market. And in the near future, the issue may be less about what media companies are doing to people and more about what people are doing with the media. The notion of media as a social problem because of their unchecked power over the means of mass expression is also breaking down with the emergence of the new media. As described earlier, this idea rested on mass society theory and particularly on the notion of uh, you say passive and automized audience. Furthermore, we see that a tighter control over access to media by elites and professional gatekeepers is also waning as individuals and organizations of modest means become content selectors and editors in their own right. So, opportunities for self expression, once denied by the old media, are celebrated by the new media. So, the idea is encapsulated in the now well-known phrase like on the internet, anyone can be an author. So the threat of homogenized media content is diminished as new technologies enable millions of individuals to become content producers and as audiences are reconceptualized as smaller and discrete taste cultures rather than as an amorous mass. The trend towards redistribution of power over the media from elites to users makes obsolete the idea of a small handful and uh, big individuals attempting to impart a dominant ideology to maintain their status quo. For example, in addition to allowing a greater variety of voices and views into public discourse, the interactive capacity of the media, especially the new media, creates new ways of grassroots organizing and coalition building. Also, along with media elites, government is losing its power to control media content. Now see the reason for regulating the broadcast media, namely scarcity of electromagnetic spectrum, is largely irrelevant with the new media and consequently legal barriers of government for protecting public morals and safety through content regulation is not easily applicable to this domain. There is no longer scarcity of electromagnetic spectrum and content regulation and censorship of content involve a bigger debate now. We will discuss about it later. Uh, so, as the massness of media declines and as the new technologies continue to empower individual, social control by elite groups in society may become more difficult. The academic study of mass communication must also change as a result of new technologies, not simply in name. However, this is less true for some aspect of discipline than for others. The study and the use of practical skills in the preparation of you students to enter into a job in the media sector will continue as new media has already developed and proliferated. So, skills such as writing, editing, and production may be slightly different, but they are just as useful as a new media environment as they were in the old. In fact, internet content is literally unbounded, and when traditional media migrate online, as for example, web based digital television and comprehensive analysis of content um, may be all but impossible, but still we have scope to exacerbate this problem. Each individual user's experience with the content may differ in the new media environment as interactive technologies allow for users to select a subset of available content, for example, an entire website or follow different hyperlinks from page to page. On the other hand, network technologies will allow researchers to record with absolute accuracy which programs each user has accessed at what time and for how long. As web content becomes tagged with descriptions in its marked programming language, it will be possible to ascertain the specific content the user has access in the future. So studies of media audience uh, may also suffer at the same fate as audiences become harder to identify and monitor in the new media environment. Already services that provide demographic profiles of website visitors have been launched, but problem of online privacy and user deception have prevented their widespread use, at least as of yet. Then we see that media effect studies. Media effect studies too may be more difficult with audiences that are not as well assembled and accessible to researchers as they once were. In addition, mass communication laws and policies will have to change dramatically, given that the basis for media regulation uh, is inapplicable to new technologies that do not rely on scarce resources and thus provide increasing abundant opportunities for self expression. And next, the mass media are changing, uh, and that change is important and the change is radical. Several of the changes have been mentioned already. The number of channels going from few to many, and the conception of audience has been shifting from unified masses of millions who consume messages to a diffused group of even more millions, each of whom can, if desired, produce their own messages. The transfer of control from sender to user, the model of transmission going from time specific to one way communication to two-way, interactive exchanges, etc. Some are the changes that we have experienced in the media sector. Also, as discussed uh, previously, um, traditional research on media content and its effects on audiences will become more complex, and hence you need to know about IPC because of the vastness of media communication and dispersion of mass media audience. It is very, very important to study interpersonal communication. Yeah. Then we see we will make a summary of differences between mass and media communication. So one important difference lies in the user interface design and information search strategies. Other important differences are apparent as well. For example, mass communication is typified by television, whereas video games and websites may be considered the archetypes of media communication. User motivation is user motivation changes as communication moves from mass to media. If a major motivation for using mass communication was arousal regulation, as some scholars have claimed, in an environment that enables people to locate information easily and efficiently, users' motives may shift instead to more specific need satisfaction here in media environment. Motivation is tied to the ego concept, and the process by which this ego concept is developed may change as well. With mass communication, the ego concept is developed through identification with attractive others, for example, television character or celebrities. are some important key condition to develop ego among the audiences. With media communication, it is likely to develop through self actualization, as the ability to connect with people who share our personal interest and ideas is enhanced through the new technologies. In the media communication environment, social control is maintained through laws like content regulation, then professional ethics, and also education, public education. In the new media environment, technical devices and monitoring are used to keep people in line. As for example, software that prevents access to certain website or removes offensive languages from chat groups. The method of learning via mass communication was assumed to occur through social modeling, and we see that with increased interactivity and user control of media communication, learning will be more experiential. Finally, the scare statistics with traditional mass communication was how many murders a child sees by the age of 18. So that is all for today. If you have any problem and difficulty in understanding what is being delivered, then drop a message in the common WhatsApp group. And I have already told you that it is better to create a WhatsApp group of new media, so anybody can take this initiative. Thank you.